Whenever you encounter an array, more often than not, you want to do something with each array element. That's what loops are for. They access each element in turn, so you can decide what to do with it. So let's use a loop to turn the flowers array on lines 2 and 3 above the doc type into an unordered list inside the body of the page. By the way, although we're working with an array that's been hard-coded above the doc type, many arrays are created automatically. For example, as you'll see in the next chapter, data submitted from an online form is structured as an array. So working with arrays and loops is a very important part of learning how to use PHP. So let's get to work. To create an unordered list, underneath the H1 heading, we need to put some HTML tags, UL, and then a closing UL tag. And between those two tags, we'll create a PHP block. And this is where the loop will go. There are many different types of loop in PHP. The one we're going to use is dedicated specifically for working with arrays, and it's called for each. The reason it's called for each is because it begins with the for each keyword. And for each is written as a single word. Don't try to split it up into two words. That won't work. And the condition that controls the loop goes in parentheses, and the first part of the condition is the name of the array that you want to loop through. And the array is called flowers. And then you need to create a temporary variable that represents the value of each array element as you go through the loop. And you do that using the as keyword. As is case insensitive, but to indicate that it is a keyword, I'm going to put it in uppercase. And then you can use any name you like for the variable, the temporary variable, but it often makes sense to use something that tells you what you're actually looking at. Our array is an array of flowers, so let's use flower as the temporary variable. Close parenthesis for the end of the condition, and then the loop goes between a pair of curly braces. And each time that the loop runs, the code between those curly braces will be executed. So we want to echo, and we want list item. So put that as a string, and then a dot operator, and then flower. That's our temporary variable. Another dot operator and another string with the closing li tag. Now, I could have used a double quoted string to avoid using the dot operator, but you'll see a little bit later why I've done it like this. Let's just save that and then view it in a browser. And we need to change the URL. We're now in 04_06, and the name of the file was foreach_key.php. And there we are. We've got an unordered list. It looks exactly the same as we created earlier with implode. So you might be wondering, well, what's the difference between the two? Well, there's a very important difference. With implode, you can't do anything other than create a separator between the various array elements. With a loop, you can begin to do all sorts of things. So let's do some fairly simple changes. This is why I used the dot operator, because I want to pass flower to a function. And the function I'm going to use is called UC_first, which makes the first letter uppercase. This is one of the many string functions that you will find in PHP. So if I now save that, go back to the browser and refresh it, we now have an uppercase letter for each of those elements. So we're beginning to work with our elements inside the loop. Now we can do a couple of other things. Let's say you want to miss an item out. So add inside our loop a condition. We'll use an if condition. Condition between the parentheses will be if flower, that's our temporary variable, equals daffodils. We need to make this lowercase because it hasn't been changed yet. It will have been changed by the UC_first in the next line. So daffodils, and then some curly braces for our conditional statement. If flower equals daffodils, let's omit it. So we use the keyword continue. And if we save that and go back to our browser and refresh it, notice that daffodils is the third item there. It's now disappeared. What happens when you use continue is that the loop stops at that particular point, doesn't go any further, and goes back up to the next iteration of the loop. And if we wanted to break out of the loop, well, there's another keyword for that, and guess what it's called? It's called break. So let's use that, and what we're going to do is we'll have another if statement, and if flower equals orchids. Again, I'm using lowercase because the result of UC first isn't captured, so orchids will still be all lowercase. And here we will then have break. And notice when I say equals, inside a condition, of course, equals is two equal signs, not a single equal sign. If you use a single equals sign, that assigns the value to that temporary variable, so it will always be true. You need the two equal signs to make sure that the two values are equal. But we've now put in break, so if flower equals orchids, it will break. But I've put it after the echo line, so you should still see orchids when we refresh the page, but it'll stop after orchids. Reload, and there it is. After orchids, it has finished, and it's also missed out the daffodils from earlier. So, as I hope you've realized, using a for each loop is much more powerful than using implode to go through an array. Using the for each loop makes it very easy to deal with individual array elements one after the other. The for each keyword is written as a single word, and the loop is controlled by assigning the value of each array element to a temporary variable using the keyword as. We also saw how to skip a value by using continue, and how to stop a loop from running by using break.